Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? Like you're playing a part in a movie where everyone else has the script but you? Well, for 3 long years, that was my reality. But on one fateful night, in the middle of a lavish party, the ghost decided to fight back. And trust me, nobody saw it coming. I was hiding in the wings of a grand ballroom at a 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills, my feet screaming in protest after running around since 5 in the morning. Tonight was the gala for my mother-in-law Rose's 60th birthday, and the place was dripping with opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling glow over floral arrangements that cost more than my first car, and the air hummed with the smooth jazz and self-important laughter of LA's elite. I glanced down at my hands. 3 years ago, these hands held a national kickboxing championship trophy, hands that opponents on the canvas had learned to fear. Now, they were raw and chapped from dish soap and chemical floor cleaners. The velvet, plum-colored gown I was wearing was Rose's choice. She'd claimed the color was sophisticated, but I knew the truth. She wanted me to look older, frumpy, a dull backdrop to her own youthful, designer-clad radiance. Her voice, sharp and cold, suddenly cut through the speakers, dripping with that fake sweetness I'd come to despise over 3 years as her daughter-in-law. "Where is my daughter-in-law? Kayla, where are you? Bring the champagne up, dear, so your father and I can toast our wonderful guests." My head spun. I hadn't eaten a single thing all day. My morning had been a blur. A pre-dawn trip to the downtown flower market, arranging bouquets back at the mansion, then rushing to the hotel to triple-check the menu and seating charts. Rose was meticulous. A napkin folded a millimeter off-center was grounds for a lecture, so I had to do everything myself. I quickly straightened my dress, grabbed the silver tray of champagne flutes, and headed for the stage. The stage lights were blinding. In front of me, my father-in-law Frank was perched on an ornate, throne-like chair, his face flushed from the whiskey he'd been sipping all evening. Rose stood beside him, dripping in diamonds, her smile as bright as a Hollywood premiere, but the look she gave me was as sharp as a shard of glass. My husband, Jason, sat at the head table, completely absorbed in his phone, not even bothering to look up as I approached. Forcing a smile, I carefully lifted a crystal flute and approached my father-in-law. "A toast to you, Frank," I began, my voice trembling slightly from exhaustion. "May you have a long, healthy, and happy life." Just as I finished, a wave of dizziness washed over me. The world went dark for a split second, my hand shook violently, and a few drops of champagne sloshed over the rim of the glass, landing on the lapel of Frank's expensive tuxedo. It was only a few drops, but the entire ballroom fell silent. Frank's eyes locked onto mine, his face contorting from red to a furious shade of purple. He shot up from his chair, his arms swinging out, and he backhanded a bowl of steaming hot lobster bisque right off the table and directly into my face. The world exploded in searing pain. The hot, creamy liquid splattered across my face and neck, chunks of lobster clinging to my hair. The immediate, agonizing burn made me cry out and stumble backward, my heel catching on the carpet, sending me crashing to the floor. "You useless idiot!" Frank's voice boomed like thunder. "You can't even serve a simple glass of champagne. Are you trying to curse me? Is that it? Spilling a drink on me at my own wife's party?" The room was dead silent, every eye fixed on me. I saw it all: pity, disgust, and even a few snickers of cruel amusement. I raised a hand to my face, my tears mixing with the salty, sticky soup. My skin felt like it was on fire. I looked up at Jason, my husband, desperately hoping he would rush to my side, help me up, say something, anything. But he just glanced at me with an expression of pure embarrassment before turning to whisper something to the person next to him, as if I were some stranger who had crashed the party. Rose twisted the knife. "Honestly, you can take the girl out of the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the girl," she sneered. "Can't even handle a simple task." "You've ruined my entire party," Frank pointed a trembling finger at the floor. Kneel down and apologize to me and all of our guests, right now. If you don't beg for forgiveness on your hands and knees, don't you dare step foot in my house again." Kneel? In front of all these people? I was his daughter-in-law, a human being, not some animal he could strike and command at will. Jason finally stood up and walked over, but not to help me. He shoved a wad of napkins into my hand. "Just clean yourself up and apologize to Dad," he hissed, his voice tight with frustration. "Let's just get this over with. You're embarrassing me." That was it. That was the line. His words were the final crack in the dam of patience, sacrifice, and suffering I had built over 3 years. It all came crumbling down. I looked at Jason, at his smug parents, at the sea of condescending faces around me. They looked down on me because I didn't come from old money, because my parents gave us their life savings instead of a $1 billion trust fund. They had all forgotten that before I became a shadow in their cold, sterile mansion, I was Kayla the Hurricane Evans, the undefeated national kickboxing champion, the pride of the sport. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony in my soul. Slowly, deliberately, I got to my feet. I didn't wipe my face, and I certainly didn't kneel. I stared directly into Frank's eyes, and for the first time in 3 years, there was no fear, no submission. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Seeing me defy him, Frank's face went rigid with fury. "You dare to look at me like that? You disrespectful brat! I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget." He raised his right hand, aiming to slap me across the face with all his strength. A full-force blow from a man his size could have easily broken my jaw. But he forgot one crucial detail. He forgot who his daughter-in-law really was. In that instant, 3 years of repressed instinct surged back to life. My senses sharpened. Time seemed to slow down. I could see the trajectory of his arm, the tightening of his knuckles. When his hand was just inches from my face, I leaned slightly to the left, my own left hand snapping up like a viper, clamping down on his wrist. My right hand slid under his elbow, locking the joint. With a sharp twist, I applied a classic armbar, forcing his arm up behind his back at an unnatural angle. A sickening crack echoed through the silent ballroom. "Triple A-abba-ba-ba! My arm! You broke my arm!" Frank screamed, his face a mask of agony as he crumpled forward, completely immobilized. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Rose froze, her jaw hanging open. Jason stood like a statue, his eyes wide with disbelief, staring at the gentle, meek wife who was now expertly subduing his powerful father with a single move. I leaned in close to Frank's ear, my voice dangerously calm. "Let me tell you something, Frank. I've put up with you for 3 years. Not because I'm afraid of you, but because I respected the idea of family. But tonight, when you threw that soup in my face, you also threw away the very last shred of respect I had for any of you." I shoved him forward. He stumbled into Rose, and the two of them staggered, nearly tumbling to the floor. Jason, finally snapping out of his shock, lunged at me. "What are you doing? You hit my father. Are you insane?" I turned my gaze on him. The cold, lethal fire in my eyes stopped him dead in his tracks, his hand hovering in midair. He had never seen this side of me. This was not the timid wife he knew. This was a cornered animal, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her own humiliation. "Don't touch me," I growled. "If you lay a single finger on me, I guarantee you won't walk out of here in one piece." He flinched back. My rage still boiling, I turned to the side of the stage where an ornate mahogany chair sat. I unleashed a powerful, vicious roundhouse kick. Crack! The thick wooden chair splintered in two, the pieces flying across the stage. A few of the society wives in the front row shrieked in terror. I brushed my hands off, adjusted my soup-stained gown, and swept my gaze over the pale, terrified faces of my husband's family. "From this day on," I announced, my voice ringing with newfound authority, "no one will ever trample on me again." Then I turned my back on them all and walked, head held high, straight for the main exit. Not a single person dared to stand in my way. The sharp staccato of my heels on the marble floor was a war drum, echoing my departure from a life I never truly lived. Behind me, I left the whimpers of a broken man, the shrieks of a woman whose perfect party was in ruins, and the chaos of a gala brought to its knees. I stepped out of the hotel and into the warm, smoggy embrace of the Los Angeles night. The air, thick but free, filled my lungs. The tears had already dried on my face, leaving behind a salty, tight feeling, a mask of pure fury. A plan, cold and sharp, was beginning to form in my mind. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address of a quiet, divey coffee shop in a forgotten corner of the valley, a place where no one would look twice at my disastrous state. In the grimy bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, washing away the lobster bisque. The skin where the soup had hit was an angry, throbbing red, but I barely felt it. I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My eyes were puffy, but they held a glint of steel I hadn't seen in years. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a long, long time. "Big Mike, it's Kayla." A deep, gravelly voice, thick with concern, answered on the other end. "Kayla? What's wrong? You sound different. It's been a while. I need you to pick me up. Right now. I'm at the Grindhouse on Van Nuwen." 15 minutes later, a menacing black Ford Raptor, lifted and imposing, screeched to a halt outside. Mike swung out of the driver's seat. He was a mountain of a man, his ex-fighter's muscles straining against a tight black t-shirt. Mike had been my coach back in my championship days, a surrogate older brother who had always watched over me. After a career-ending injury, he'd opened a high-end security and private investigation firm, becoming a formidable figure in LA's shadowy underbelly. The second he saw my stained dress and the angry burn on my face, his eyes went dark. "Who?" he growled, the single word carrying a world of menace. "Who did this to you? Was it Jason? That worthless old man Frank?" "I handled them at the hotel," I said, my voice flat. "But I need your help with something much more important, the thing I asked you to look into last month. Did you find anything?" Mike's expression softened with pity. He nodded grimly, ushering me into the truck and shutting the door. From the glove compartment, he pulled out a thick manila envelope and handed it to me. "I was going to call you," he said, his voice low. I didn't want to be the one to drop this bomb. Steel yourself, kid." My hand trembled slightly as I opened the clasp. Inside was a lab report and a stack of glossy surveillance photos. The report was from a DNA lab. Subject 1, Jason Miller. Subject 2, Leo Miller. Conclusion: paternity probability, 99.99%. A roaring sound filled my ears. I had suspected it, of course. The furtive glances, the overly familiar touches between Jason and Megan, his brother's wife. But seeing the undeniable proof, my heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Mike lit a cigarette, the tip glowing in the dark cab. Jason's brother, David, has been on an oil rig in the Gulf for the last 2 years, hasn't been home once. In that time, Jason and Megan have been carrying on right under your nose. The kid, Leo, he's Jason's son. And the sickest part? Frank and Rose know all about it. I flipped through the photos. There was Jason pushing Leo on a swing at a park in Santa Monica. Jason feeding Megan a bite of dessert at a cozy restaurant. A shot of them kissing, deeply, in the front seat of Jason's car. The dates stamped on the photos confirmed this had been going on since I first married into that family. "The old folks know," Mike continued, his voice laced with disgust, "but they keep their mouths shut. Jason is their golden boy, and they're terrified of a scandal. Besides, little Leo is their real grandson, their precious bloodline, so they're happy to cover it all up, to keep him close. They've been playing you for a fool, Kayla. Using the money your parents gave you to raise Jason's bastard child with his own sister-in-law." I clutched the envelope so tightly the edges crumpled. So that explained everything. Jason's coldness, Rose's constant criticism, Frank's utter contempt. It wasn't just my middle-class background they despised. They were co-conspirators in a grand, disgusting play, and I was the unwitting chump funding the whole production. The $5 million my parents had scraped together from selling their business, the money I'd given Jason to invest in our company, was being used to buy designer clothes and pay the rent on a secret life for Megan and his son. A laugh escaped my lips. It was a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the confined space of the truck. The tears were gone. In their place, a cold, unquenchable fire of vengeance had been lit. "Mike," I said, my voice steady and clear, "thank you. Now, Take me home. It's time to take out the trash." He looked at me, saw the resolve in my eyes, and gave a firm nod. "You got it, kid. I'm right behind you. Anyone even looks at you wrong, they'll learn some manners real quick." The Raptor's engine roared to life, and we peeled out onto the street, heading for the manicured lawns and hollow mansions of Bel Air. The rules of the game had just changed, and now I was the one holding all the cards. When we pulled up to the sprawling mansion, the lights were blazing. I told Mike to wait in the car. This was a performance I needed to give myself. He nodded but kept the engine running, his eyes fixed on the front door, ready to storm in at a moment's notice. I pushed open the heavy oak doors and walked into the living room. The air was thick with misery. Frank was slumped on the sofa, his arm in a makeshift sling, his face pale and twisted in pain. Rose sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Jason was pacing back and forth, looking like a cornered rat. The moment they saw me, they erupted. "You!" Rose shrieked, jumping to her feet and pointing a finger at me. "You have the nerve to show your face here? After you assaulted your father-in-law? After you humiliated this family in front of everyone? I'm calling the police. We're going to have you thrown in jail for assault." Jason joined in, his voice dripping with condescending anger. "Kayla, you need to apologize to my parents right now. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused? We're already talking to our lawyer. If you know what's good for you, you'll get on your knees and beg them to drop the charges." I said nothing. I walked calmly to the marble coffee table, took out the manila envelope, and tossed it down. The sharp slap of the envelope hitting the stone silenced them. I sat down in the armchair opposite them, crossed my legs, and looked at them with an expression of pure contempt. "Call the police? Go ahead," I insist. "And while you're at it, I'll be sure to send a copy of this to the cops, to all your lovely neighbors, and most importantly, I'll overnight it to David on his oil rig. I'm sure he'd be very interested to see what his loving family has been up to." Jason's face went white. He snatched the envelope and ripped it open. The moment he saw the DNA report, the blood drained from his face. His hands went slack, and the paper fluttered to the floor. Frank and Rose, seeing his reaction, scrambled to pick it up. As they read the conclusion, Rose's mouth fell open, her threats dying in her throat. Frank turned a sickly shade of gray, sweat beading on his forehead, all thoughts of his broken arm forgotten. The room plunged into a dead, suffocating silence. The filthiest secret they had fought so hard to conceal was now laid bare under the bright, unforgiving lights of their own living room. "What's the matter?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "Cat got your tongue? A whole family of liars and cheats. The husband sleeping with his brother's wife, the in-laws covering it up to protect their precious grandson. Bravo! Truly an admirable, picture-perfect family. You can't," Rose stammered, trying to rally. "That test is a fake! You're trying to frame us!" "Fake?" I slammed my hand on the table, the sharp crack making her jump. "Is it really? Because I have a whole collection of photos and videos. Would you like a private screening? We can put it up on the 85-inch TV right there. See the happy couple in action." Jason finally collapsed onto the sofa, burying his head in his hands. "Kayla, please, be calm. Let's just talk about this. Don't make a scene." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Now you want to talk? A minute ago, you were telling me to kneel. So you listen to me now. From this moment forward, I run this house. Every decision, big or small, goes through me. And if anyone here gives me any trouble, all of this evidence goes straight to David. And we all know what a temper he has. Do you think he'll just send a strongly worded letter? Or will he fly home and burn this whole house down with all of you in it?" Frank began to tremble, his voice a weak whisper. "Kayla, child, don't do anything rash. This is a family matter. We can handle this quietly." I stood up, looking down at the three of them, cowering in fear. "Oh, we will handle it quietly," I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. "But we'll be handling it according to my rules." The next morning, I rose with the sun, but not to slave away in the kitchen. I went out to the pool deck, moved through a series of familiar stretches and kicks, feeling the power return to my limbs. Then I showered, put on a sleek power suit I hadn't touched in years, and applied my makeup with meticulous care. When I came downstairs, Rose was fumbling in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to work the high-tech stove to boil water for instant ramen. I sailed past her without a word and found Jason sitting in the living room, looking like a ghost. "Give them to me," I said, holding out my hand. He looked up, confused. "Give you what?" "The corporate bank cards, the online banking passwords, and every single credit card in your wallet." "Now," he bristled. "Are you crazy? That's the company's operating capital. How am I supposed to do business?" My eyes narrowed. "Business? Or were you planning to transfer another $50,000 to your sister-in-law for that new Chanel bag? Did you think I wouldn't notice? That's my parents' life savings you've been using as your personal slush fund. Your access is revoked." I pulled out my phone and started to dial. "You know, I haven't checked in with David in a while. I should see how he's doing." "No, fine, I'll get them." Jason scrambled up the stairs and returned a minute later with a stack of plastic and a sheet of paper with login details. I took everything, leaving him with a single $20 bill from his wallet. "From now on," I said, my voice cold and clinical, "your daily allowance is $20 for gas and lunch. If you require any additional funds, you can submit a formal written request. I'll consider it." I turned to Rose, who was now standing in the doorway holding a steaming bowl of cheap noodles, her face a mask of impotent rage. "You too. That supplementary card I gave you for groceries? Hand it over." She hesitated, but one look at Frank's bandaged arm in the corner was enough to make her reach into her housecoat and slap the card onto the table. "Here," she hissed. "Are you trying to starve us to death?" "Don't be dramatic," I replied coolly. "There's a whole case of ramen in the pantry. No one's going to die." I gathered my winnings, slipped them into my new briefcase, and turned back to Jason, delivering my final ultimatum. "The finances are just the beginning. You have 3 days. 3 days to get Megan and her son out of that luxury condo you're renting for them. You will cut off all contact and all financial support. Am I clear?" He stammered. "But Leo is my son. He's just a child. I can't just throw them out on the street." "That is your problem to solve, not mine," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You have 2 choices. Either she and your son are out, or you and your parents are out. I will not live in this house and pay for the upkeep of my husband's mistress and his illegitimate child. 3 days. I'll be checking, and if I so much as see her shadow anywhere near this property after that, you'll regret it." With that, I walked out the front door. Mike was waiting for me in the Raptor, and for the first time in years, I wasn't leaving to run errands for them. I was leaving for me. As we drove, I got on my banking app, froze every card, and changed every password. A notification popped up. A fee for the text alert. I smiled. The game was well and truly afoot. Those 3 days were a slow, agonizing descent into hell for my new prisoners. I cut off the cable and the internet. The massive, restaurant-grade refrigerator, once overflowing with gourmet food, now held nothing but a carton of eggs and a bottle of tap water. The first morning, I came downstairs to find Rose wrestling with the vacuum cleaner, a chore she'd never once performed. She was clumsy, banging it into the expensive furniture, leaving streaks of dust everywhere. "Try to get the corners, Rose," I called out cheerfully. "I paid a lot of money for this house. I won't have it looking like a pigsty." She shot me a look of pure hatred but bit her tongue and continued her clumsy work. I breezed into the kitchen and made myself a fresh brewed latte. The rich aroma drifted into the living room where Frank sat miserably on the couch, his one good hand nervously fiddling with the useless TV remote. "Coffee, Frank?" I asked, my voice dripping with mock politeness. He just grunted and turned away, but I could see him swallowing hard. I had thrown out all his cigars and his secret stash of instant coffee. For a man addicted to his vices, this was a form of torture more exquisite than a broken arm. Jason came downstairs looking haggard, his designer stubble now just a messy, unkempt beard. He approached me with the humiliated air of a beggar. "Kayla, can I have some money for gas? My tank is on empty, and I have an important meeting with a client." I took a slow sip of my latte. "Take the bus, or an Uber. I left you $20 yesterday. Surely you haven't spent it all already." "$20 doesn't get you anywhere in LA, he pleaded. I need to eat, to at least buy the client a coffee. Don't be unreasonable. I set my mug down with a clatter. Unreasonable? For 3 years, I lived on whatever pocket change you threw my way. Did I complain? When you were taking my parents' money to buy $1,000 handbags for your mistress and dining at Michelin-star restaurants, did you think you were being unreasonable? If you want gas money, go get a job. Or, better yet, tell your precious Megan to sell that new Chanel bag. He paled and slunk away, grabbing his briefcase and walking out the front door. As he left, I called after him, "And be back in time to make dinner. I'm going to the spa with friends. Don't wait up." I spent the rest of the day pampering myself, getting a massage, a facial, feeling the years of stress and neglect melt away. When I returned that evening, the scene was even more pathetic than I had imagined. The dining table was set with a single plate of boiled spinach and a small bowl of soy sauce. Rose and Frank were eating in sullen silence. Seeing me, Rose immediately threw down her chopsticks. "Look at this! This is how you treat us? You're feeding us rabbit food. Are you trying to kill us?" I shrugged, slipping off my heels. There were eggs in the fridge. Don't you know how to fry an egg? Besides, a simple diet is good for you. Your cholesterol is too high anyway. Think of it as a detox. I walked past her and headed upstairs, ignoring her sputtering cries. I locked the door to the master suite, a room Jason was now banished from, and sank into the plush king-sized bed. Tomorrow was the deadline, and I couldn't wait to see how this pathetic little soap opera would finally end. On the third day, the atmosphere inside the Bel Air mansion was stretched taut enough to snap. I sat serenely in the living room, flipping through a copy of Vogue, but my ears were tuned to every sound. Jason paced the floor like a caged animal, glancing at his Rolex every 30 seconds, sweat plastering his designer shirt to his back despite the Arctic blast of the air conditioning. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. Jason flinched as if he'd been shot. Rose scurried out from the kitchen, darting a terrified look in my direction before rushing to the door. A moment later, the click-clack of expensive heels echoed in the foyer. Megan swept into the room, holding little Leo by the hand. She was a vision in a vibrant red silk dress, the new Chanel bag slung over her shoulder, a diamond necklace glittering at her throat. She looked less like a visitor and more like she was arriving to claim her throne, completely oblivious to the fact that there had been a coup. "Frank! Rose! I brought the heir to see his grandparents." Her voice, a saccharine melody, filled the room. She deliberately ignored my presence on the sofa. "I heard about your fall, Frank. I was so worried I had to come right over." Leo ran to Rose, who gave him a stiff, awkward hug, her eyes flicking nervously toward me. "Grandma," the boy whined, "I want chicken nuggets." Mommy said Grandma has the best chicken nuggets. Rose just mumbled something incoherent, her face a mess of fear and guilt. Only then did Megan deign to notice me, her eyes sweeping over me with a mixture of pity and disdain. "Oh, Kayla, you're here. I figured you'd be busy in the kitchen or running errands. Enjoying your day off? Playing Lady of the Manor?" I slowly lowered the magazine, meeting her gaze. She wore her makeup like armor, a thick layer trying to conceal the faint lines of desperation around her eyes, but it couldn't hide the blatant entitlement that radiated from her. She still thought I was the same meek, foolish Kayla. She still thought this disgusting charade had a future. Jason stood frozen, frantically trying to signal for her to leave, but she either didn't notice or didn't care. So confident was she in her position as the mother of the true heir. "What's wrong, honey?" she cooed at Jason. "Got something in your eye?" I folded the magazine and placed it on the table with a decisive thud. The sound made Megan jump. I rose to my feet, a slow smile spreading across my face, though it didn't reach my eyes. "My dear sister-in-law, you're here for a visit? How wonderful. Let me extend the proper welcome." Megan's brow furrowed, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "What game are you playing now? I'm a guest. You should learn some manners. I guess they don't teach those where you come from." A loud, genuine laugh erupted from my chest, a sound so foreign in that house that it made them all flinch. Manners? Let's see who needs a lesson in common decency. The woman who sleeps with her husband's brother and then has the audacity to lecture his wife in her own home. Jason lunged forward, trying to get between us. Kayla, stop it. Just be calm. Megan, just take Leo and go home. Now. Megan shoved him aside. Why should I? Why are you so afraid of her? This is your house, Jason. My son is your parents' grandson. I'm not going anywhere. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. I strode toward her, each step deliberate and heavy with menace. You want to stay? Fine. I'll make you a meal you'll never forget. Before she could react, I snatched the Chanel bag from her shoulder. Hey, what are you doing? Give that back. That cost a fortune, she shrieked. I ignored her, unceremoniously dumping the entire contents of the bag onto the glass coffee table. Lipstick, phone, keys, and a wallet tumbled out. I picked up the wallet and pulled out a neatly folded receipt. Her habit of keeping receipts to flaunt her purchases was about to be her downfall. I held up the flimsy piece of paper for all to see. Date of purchase, 2 days ago. Chanel, Rodeo Drive. Paid with the company Platinum Amex, cardholder Jason Miller. Total, $8,500. I turned and threw the receipt at Jason's face. Care to explain this? The company is supposedly struggling. We're late on payroll, yet you have enough money to buy your sister-in-law a designer handbag? Is she a new board member I'm not aware of? Megan's face went white. That was a gift. For a client. Jason asked me to pick it up for him. A client gift you just happened to be carrying around? I sneered. Oh, but it gets better. I picked up the TV remote and pressed a button. The massive 85-inch screen flickered to life, already connected to my phone. A video file began to play. And there they were, Jason and Megan, tangled together in the front seat of his car, their clandestine meeting captured in high definition. Their smug, treacherous voices filled the silent, horrified room. Don't worry, Jason's voice oozed. My idiot wife has no clue. She just keeps working like a dog, and the money from her parents keeps our company afloat. Good, Megan purred, stroking his face. Just keep it coming. Leo and I have expensive taste. As soon as you drain her accounts dry, you can kick her to the curb and we can finally be a real family. The room was utterly still. Frank squeezed his eyes shut. Rose covered her mouth with a trembling hand. Megan was frozen, her face a mask of pure terror, her legs shaking so hard she could barely stand. Little Leo, confused by the images on the screen, started to cry. I switched off the TV and turned back to Megan, my voice like ice. Still want to deny it? Such a loving relationship between a man and his brother's wife. Sleeping together, having a child together, and plotting to steal all my money. You thought I was your personal cash machine, didn't you? Megan finally broke, collapsing to the floor. She crawled toward Jason, grabbing his pant leg. Jason, say something. You promised you would handle it. You said she was stupid. Jason kicked her hand away, backing up as if she were diseased. Shut up. This is all your fault. I told you not to come here. I watched the pathetic scene with disgust. These people, so sophisticated and poised on the surface, were nothing but vipers turning on each other the moment they were exposed. I walked over to Megan and crouched down, forcing her to look at me. Are you scared now? Were you scared when you were in bed with my husband? Were you scared when you were spending my money? It's too late for fear. Her tears streaked through her heavy makeup. Kayla, please, I'm begging you. Forgive me. Don't tell David. Please, he'll kill me. I shoved her away. Forgiveness? That word isn't in my vocabulary. Not for betrayers. I stood and addressed Frank and Rose directly. You have 2 options. 1, you throw this woman and her child out of my house this instant. Or 2, I send this entire video to David on his oil rig, and then I post it on every social media platform imaginable. Let the world see what a pillar of the community the Miller family really is. The threat of their eldest, most volatile son finding out was the final straw for Rose. All her pent-up rage and fear erupted. She flew at Megan, grabbing a fistful of her hair and screaming, "You tramp! You gold-digging whore! You've ruined us!" She started hitting and scratching, all pretense of civility gone. Megan shrieked, trying to fight back. It was a pathetic, ugly brawl fueled by desperation and betrayal. "Enough!" I roared, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop dirtying my floor." Rose froze and scrambled back. Megan lay sobbing on the ground, her hair a mess, her designer dress torn. I pointed to the door. "Get your things and get out. And don't ever let me see your face in this neighborhood again. And take the boy with you." Rose gasped, rushing to shield Leo. "Kayla, you can't. He's our grandson. He's innocent." I leveled a cold gaze at her. "You love your grandson? Fine. Pack your bags and go live on the street with them. This house is in my name. I have no obligation to raise the product of my husband's affair. So, you choose, Rose. Your precious grandson or this mansion." Rose stared at the crying child, then around at the opulent living room, the priceless art, the life of comfort she was so terrified of losing. Self-preservation won. She slowly let go of Leo and backed away. That single, silent action was the most damning indictment of them all. Megan saw it and her face crumpled in absolute despair. She had been cast out. She staggered to her feet, pulled Leo close, and shot me a look of pure venom. "You'll pay for this." I laughed. "I'm waiting. But first, you'd better worry about your husband. I hear the internet connection on oil rigs is surprisingly good these days." I grabbed the Chanel bag and threw it out the open front door. "Get out." Megan stumbled out, dragging her crying son behind her. The heavy iron gates swung shut, a final, definitive end to her part in this saga. I turned back to the 3 remaining figures, huddled together like frightened sheep. "Now that we've dealt with the trash," I said, walking back to the coffee table and picking up another file from my briefcase, "let's discuss our internal affairs." I slid the file across the marble table toward Jason. "Sign it." He picked it up with a shaking hand. It was a formal, ironclad marital settlement agreement drafted by the best divorce attorney in the state. As he scanned the pages, his eyes widened in horror. "What is this? You're demanding 80% of all assets? The company, this house, the cars, everything? Are you insane? You're trying to rob me blind. I'll never sign this." I calmly took a sip of water. "Read the fine print, Jason. The initial $5 million investment was a premarital gift from my parents, directly to me. With interest over 3 years, plus damages for emotional distress, fraud, and the funds you embezzled to support your mistress, 80% is actually quite generous. I'm leaving you with enough to cover your debts and maybe rent a room somewhere in the valley." "No! No way!" He tore the document in half and threw the pieces on the floor. "We'll see what a judge says. In California, marital assets are split 50-50. The court will see this for the robbery it is." I didn't even flinch at the scattered paper. I simply looked at him, a flicker of pity in my eyes. "You want to go to court? Fine. But I think before we get the lawyers involved, I should probably have a little chat with David. I hear he's due for shore leave soon. It's only right he hears the news from family first, don't you think?" Jason's face, already pale, turned the color of ash. David, his older brother, was the one person in the world he was truly afraid of. David was a hard man, forged by years of rough work and isolation, with a notoriously short fuse and a primitive sense of justice. If he found out what Jason had done with his wife, it wouldn't just be a lawsuit, it would be a bloodbath. I pulled out my phone, found David's contact, and held my thumb over the call button. Last chance. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the sound of Jason's ragged breathing. His eyes darted to his parents, a desperate, silent plea for help. But Frank and Rose just stared at the floor, refusing to meet his gaze. They knew what David was capable of. In that moment, they chose their own safety over their son's fortune. My thumb pressed down. The phone started ringing, the sound echoing through the room on speakerphone. Each ring was a hammer blow against Jason's composure. Sweat poured down his temples, soaking the collar of his shirt. Ring. Ring. "Stop! Hang up!" he screamed, his voice cracking with sheer terror. I'll sign it. Just don't let him answer." A cool smile touched my lips. The call connected, and a gruff voice answered. "Hello?" "Oh, sorry, wrong number," I said cheerfully, and ended the call. I reached back into my briefcase and pulled out an identical, pristine copy of the agreement and a pen. I placed them neatly on the table in front of him. "Sign it, and don't make me lose my patience." With a hand that trembled so violently he could barely hold the pen, Jason signed his name. The signature was a mangled, spidery scrawl, a fitting epitaph for the life he had just signed away. "There," he whispered, slumping forward in defeat. "Are you happy now?" I took the signed document, checked it carefully, and placed it securely back in my briefcase. Happy? No. This isn't about happiness. This is about justice. This is me taking back what's mine. The pain you all caused me. There's no price tag for that. I stood up and glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner. "I'm giving the three of you 1 hour to pack. You may take your personal clothing and toiletries. That's it. All furniture, electronics, artwork, jewelry, and vehicles remain here, as stipulated in the agreement. In 60 minutes, a locksmith will be here to change every lock on this property. Anyone still inside after that will be considered a trespasser, and I will have you removed by the police." I turned and walked toward the door, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their lives. This house, this monument to their greed and deceit, was about to be cleansed. The rot was being purged, and I would finally be able to breathe again. Exactly 1 hour later, a moving truck, not a fancy one, but a beat-up 1.5-ton rust bucket pulled up to the curb, along with a team of burly movers I'd hired. They weren't carrying moving blankets and bubble wrap. They were carrying stacks of cheap blue and red checkered plastic bags, the kind you see used for laundry or hauling junk. I stood at the front door, arms crossed, and gave the foreman his instructions. "Go into the bedrooms upstairs and downstairs. Pack up all the used clothing, shoes, and cheap personal effects you find. Put them in these bags, and I mean only the cheap stuff. Anything that looks valuable, watches, jewelry, electronics, art, you leave it. If anyone tries to sneak something out, you let me know immediately." The men nodded and swarmed into the mansion like a conquering army. The scene inside was pure chaos. Rose was frantically trying to stuff a pair of Lalique crystal vases into a duffel bag. I walked over, took the bag from her, and emptied it onto the floor. "Put those down. The agreement specifies all home decor belongs to me. You get to take the clothes on your back, and that's about it." "These were a birthday gift," she shrieked. "You're a thief." "Your friend may have given them to you," I replied calmly, "but I paid for the birthday party where you received them. So, they're mine. Now step aside." A large mover brushed past her, grabbing armfuls of her silk and cashmere loungewear and stuffing it unceremoniously into a flimsy checkered bag. Rose watched, her face a mask of horror, as her multi-thousand-dollar wardrobe was treated like a pile of rags. In the office, Jason was trying to remove the hard drive from the desktop computer. I appeared in the doorway. "Stop right there. Company data and property. You no longer have security clearance. You try to take that, and I'll add corporate espionage to the list of charges." He slammed the screwdriver down in frustration and began throwing a few rumpled suits into an old gym bag. 15 minutes later, the three of them were herded out onto the manicured front lawn like livestock. Their entire lives were now contained in 6 pathetic-looking checkered bags, piled haphazardly on the pristine grass. Frank, his face beet red, clutched his chest. You're a monster," he wheezed. "You'll get what's coming to you." I looked at him without a shred of pity. "Oh, I already have. What's coming to you is standing right in front of you. This is you reaping what you sowed for 3 years. I signaled to the security guards from the front gate, whom I'd already briefed. 2 imposing men in crisp uniforms stepped forward. "Sir, ma'am, you'll have to vacate the premises now." They gently but firmly escorted the 3 Millers toward the gate. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, whispering and pointing at the unbelievable sight of the once mighty family being exiled with their belongings in trash bags. I walked to the gate, watched them take their first steps into their new, impoverished life, and then swung the heavy iron gate shut. The loud, final clang of the lock was the closing punctuation on the darkest chapter of my life. I turned back to my house, took a deep breath of the jasmine-scented air, and for the first time in years, it felt clean. 2 days after I had them thrown out, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I already knew who it was. I was lounging by my pool, getting a manicure, and I put the call on speaker. "Kayla, please, you have to help us. It's Dad. He's dying." It was Jason, his voice shredded with panic, the sounds of chaos echoing in the background. I examined my freshly painted nails, a shade of blood red. "Dad? My dad is in Arizona, playing golf. You must have the wrong number." "My dad?" "Frank. He's in the ER at County General. He had a massive stroke. They say he needs emergency surgery, but we don't have the money for the deposit." "Kayla, please, for the love of God, just this once. I'm begging you." I blew gently on my nails. "Fine," I said, my voice bored. "Out of respect for what we once had, I'll pay a visit. But as for the money, we'll see." I drove my gleaming Mercedes to the chaotic, overcrowded county hospital. I deliberately chose a severe but elegant black dress paired with oversized Chanel sunglasses, radiating an aura of untouchable power and wealth. As I walked down the long, sterile hallways, past the groans of the sick and the stench of antiseptic, I was an alien from another world. I found them huddled in a corner of the emergency waiting area. Jason was slumped on the floor, his expensive suit now a rumpled, stained mess, a scruffy beard covering his once handsome face. He looked 10 years older. Rose sat beside him on a hard plastic chair, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow, clutching a half-eaten bag of chips. The moment he saw me, Jason scrambled to his feet like a drowning man spotting a rescue boat. He reached for me, but I took a sharp step back. "Kayla, you came," he gasped. "The doctor said they need a $25,000 deposit before they'll operate. Please, just lend it to me. I'll pay you back, I swear. I'll be your slave for the rest of my life." I looked from his desperate face to Rose, who was now shrinking under my gaze, drowning in her own shame. My voice was crisp and clear, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Lend it to you? With what collateral? Jason, you have no assets, no job, and a mountain of debt. But wait a minute, you have that secret fund, don't you? Why don't you use that?" He stared at me, bewildered. "What are you talking about? You took everything." I let out a small, cruel laugh and slid my sunglasses off, looking him directly in the eye. "I'm talking about the offshore account in the Caymans. The one you set up in your college buddy's name to siphon off company funds. The one with $500,000 in it. Surely that's enough to cover Daddy's little surgery." A flicker of hope ignited in Jason's eyes, quickly followed by confusion and then dawning horror as I continued. "But oh, that's right. I had my PI check on that account yesterday. It's been completely emptied. It seems your darling Megan, right after being tossed from my house, went straight to the bank, liquidated the entire account, and booked a one-way, first-class ticket to Dubai. I imagine she's sipping champagne at the Burj Al Arab right now, laughing at what a gullible fool you are." The words hit him like a physical blow. He stood frozen, his mouth hanging open, his face a grotesque mask of disbelief. $500,000, his escape plan, his last hope, his entire secret fortune, stolen by the very woman he had betrayed everyone for. Rose, hearing that her last hope for a comfortable future had vanished, let out a strangled cry and fainted, sliding off her chair onto the grimy floor. Jason just crumpled, sinking to his knees and letting out a raw, animalistic howl of despair. The betrayal from Megan was a wound far deeper than any I could have inflicted. I watched the scene with cold detachment. This was the price of greed and treachery. They built their house of cards on my back, and now they were being destroyed by the very people they had conspired with. The universe has a funny way of balancing the books. The chaos attracted a nurse, who came over to attend to Rose. The waiting room was now buzzing with whispers about the dramatic, well-dressed woman and the broken family at her feet. I looked at my watch. "I don't have all day to watch this little drama unfold. Your father is in there dying. Do you want my help or not?" Jason snapped his head up, crawling towards me on his knees, banging his forehead on the dirty linoleum. "Kayla, please, I'll do anything. I was a fool, a monster. I know. But my father. He doesn't deserve to die like this. Please, whatever you want, it's yours." Rose, having been revived by the nurse, crawled over to kneel beside her son, her voice a hoarse croak. "We're sorry, Kayla. We were wrong. Please, save him." I looked down at the two of them groveling at my feet. It was a scene I had replayed in my mind 1,000 times, yet seeing it now, I felt only a profound sense of disgust. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. I stepped back, avoiding their grasping hands. "I will pay the hospital bill," I said, my voice ringing with authority. "And I will give you a small amount of money to live on, but it comes with 3 conditions, non-negotiable." Jason nodded frantically. "Anything, Kayla. Anything. First, you will take out a full-page ad in the Los Angeles Times for 3 consecutive Sundays, issuing a formal, public apology to me for the abuse, the infidelity, and the financial fraud. The text of the apology will be drafted by my lawyer. You will simply sign it and pay for it." Jason went pale. A public shaming of that magnitude would make him a pariah, but he had no choice. "Done," he choked out. "Second, you will sign a legally binding confession of judgment for the $500,000 you embezzled from the company. I won't press criminal charges now, but you will be legally obligated to pay back that debt, with interest, for the rest of your life." His shoulders slumped. A life sentence of debt. He nodded again, numbly. "And third, the most important condition, the moment Frank is discharged from this hospital, you, your mother, and your father will leave Los Angeles. You will go back to whatever backwater town in Kansas you crawled out of, and you will never set foot in this city again. If I ever see or hear of any of you being in LA County, the embezzlement charges will be filed with the DA's office that same day." Rose started sobbing. "Go back? We have nothing there. We sold everything." "That's your problem," I said flatly. "Go live in a trailer park, work at a diner. I don't care. Just disappear." I reached into my purse, took out a thick envelope containing $25,000 in cash, and dropped it on the floor in front of them. "Here is the deposit for the surgery. Consider it the final charitable donation from the woman whose life you tried to ruin. From this moment on, we are strangers." Without another word, I turned and walked away, the sound of their weeping fading behind me. As the automatic doors of the hospital slid open, the bright California sun hit my face. I felt like I had just shed a heavy, rotten skin. I was finally, completely free. With the ghosts of my past finally exorcised, I didn't drive back to the empty mansion. I pointed the Mercedes east, away from the manicured hills of Bel Air, and headed toward the gritty, sun-baked industrial sprawl of Van Nuys. I pulled up in front of a nondescript warehouse with a faded sign that read, "Iron and Will Gym, my real home." The polished luxury of the Mercedes looked laughably out of place here. I found Mike in his natural habitat, wrapping a young fighter's hands, his voice a low growl of instruction. He looked up as I entered, a slow grin spreading across his face. He finished his task and walked over, circling me like a trainer sizing up a new prospect. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said, poking my side. 3 years of playing housewife has made you soft, champ. You got the fire back in your eyes, but the body looks like it's been living on canapés and Chardonnay." I just smiled, feeling the familiar scent of sweat, leather, and liniment fill my lungs. "I can fix the body, Mike. I need you to help me." I looked him straight in the eye. "The Pan American Games are in 6 months. I want to be on that stage. I want the gold." Mike's grin vanished, replaced by a look of deadly seriousness. He clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You got it, kid. But it's gonna be hell. I'm not going to baby you. You walk through that door, you're not a CEO, you're not a victim, you're a fighter. And I'm going to break you down to nothing and build you back up, stronger than you ever were." He wasn't exaggerating. The months that followed were a blur of agonizing, purifying pain. 3 years of inactivity had taken their toll. My muscles screamed, my lungs burned, and every morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. There were days I'd collapse on the mat, my body refusing to move, tears of frustration mixing with the sweat on my face. But every time I wanted to quit, I would see it. A bowl of hot soup flying at my face, the condescending sneer on Rose's lips, the utter spinelessness of the man I once called my husband. The humiliation became my fuel. The rage became my strength. I pushed through the pain, my comeback story being written in bruises and calluses. 3 months later, I was in Las Vegas for the national qualifiers. The winner would be the one to represent the USA at the Pan Ams. I stepped into the ring, the roar of the crowd and the glare of the lights a familiar, intoxicating embrace. My opponent in the final was a hungry 22-year-old phenom, the reigning champion, a powerhouse of speed and aggression. She saw me as a washed-up legend she was about to retire for good. The first 2 rounds were brutal. She was faster, her strikes landing with vicious precision. I took a beating, using my experience to weather the storm, blocking, weaving, absorbing the punishment. A sharp kick caught me on an old rib injury, and a jolt of white-hot pain shot through my side. As the bell rang for the final round, I staggered back to my corner, gasping for air. Mike wiped the blood from a cut above my eye. "This is it, Kayla. You dig deep now. You show her what a real champion is made of." As I walked out for the final round, my body screamed at me to give up. Then, clear as day, I saw Frank's face, contorted in rage, his hand raised to strike me. And in that moment, the fight was no longer about a title. It was about redemption. My opponent came at me, sensing the kill. She threw a high, powerful kick, leaving herself open for a fraction of a second. It was all I needed. I pivoted, ducking under her leg, and unleashed the move that had earned me my nickname, the Hurricane. A spinning back kick, executed with every ounce of pain, rage, and resilience I possessed. It landed perfectly, a sickening thud echoing through the arena. She crumpled to the canvas, and she didn't get up. The referee's count was a formality. I raised my arms in victory, a raw, primal scream tearing from my throat, releasing 3 years of pent-up silence. I hadn't just won a fight. I had taken my life back. While my body was being forged anew in the gym, my mind was waging a different war in the boardroom. The first thing I did was rename the company. Miller Industries was dead. In its place, Phoenix Industries was born. On my first official day as president and CEO, I called an emergency meeting of all department heads. The boardroom was filled with Jason's cousins, nephews, and in-laws' incompetent sycophants who had been bleeding the company dry for years. I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, my voice cold and sharp. "Good morning. As of today, this company is under new management, with a new philosophy. We will no longer tolerate mediocrity. We will reward performance, and we will eliminate dead weight." I picked up a personnel file. "Mr. Allen, Jason's cousin, head of sales. Your department hasn't met a single quarterly target in 2 years. Pack your desk. You're fired." I moved to the next. "Mrs. Peters, Rose's niece, head of accounting. I have here an audit report detailing creative accounting that has cost this company hundreds of thousands. You're not just fired, you're being investigated. Security will escort you out." One by one, I cleaned house. The room, at first filled with indignant muttering, fell into a terrified silence. By the time I was done, half the room was empty. The message was clear. The old regime was over. A week later, my assistant buzzed me. "Ma'am, there's a woman here to see you, a Miss Megan Clark. She doesn't have an appointment." I glanced at the security feed. It was Megan, but she was almost unrecognizable. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a cheap, stained t-shirt and worn-out jeans. Her hair was a mess, her face gaunt and pale. The queen had been dethroned. "Send her in," I said. She burst into my office and immediately fell to her knees, sobbing. "Kayla, please, you have to help me. The money, it's all gone. The man I went to Dubai with, he was a con artist. He took everything and left me stranded. They deported me. I have nothing. Leo and we're living in a shelter. Please, just a little money. For the boy's sake. He's your ex-husband's nephew." "Sort of." I looked at her, this pathetic creature groveling on my expensive Persian rug, and I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a profound sense of emptiness. I pressed the intercom. "Security to my office. We have a trespasser." Then I scribbled an address on a sticky note, crumpled it up, and tossed it at her. "I won't give you a dime," I said, my voice flat. "But I will give you this. It's the address of a lovely little trailer park in Bakersfield. That's where you'll find Jason and his parents. You wanted to be a family? Go find your family. See if the father of your child is willing to help you now." She stared at the crumpled paper in her hand, as if it were a snake. She knew what awaited her there was, not a loving embrace, but the bitter resentment of the people she had helped ruin. 2 large security guards entered and hauled her, weeping and pleading, out of my office. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down at the sprawling city of Los Angeles. The last piece of trash had been taken out. My life was finally clean. Now, there was only the future. My company to build, and a gold medal to win. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I was now, and forever would be, unbeatable. A few weeks later, as I was finalizing a major distribution deal for a new line of athletic wear, my assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ma'am, there's a gentleman here to see you. A Mr. David Miller." I froze, my pen hovering over the contract. David, the older brother, the wronged husband, the one person in that toxic family who was also a victim. I took a deep breath, my curiosity outweighing my apprehension, and told her to send him in. The man who walked into my office was the stark opposite of his brother. Where Jason was soft and polished, David was rugged and weathered, his skin tanned and creased from years of hard labor, his hands calloused and strong. He wore a simple, clean button-down shirt and jeans, and carried a worn leather briefcase. He met my gaze, and in his eyes, I saw not the Miller arrogance, but a deep, profound shame. He stopped a few feet from my desk and gave a short, formal bow of his head. "Miss Evans," he began, his voice low and gravelly. I don't have the words to express how sorry I am for what my family put you through. There's no excuse for it. I came here today to apologize, face to face." I stood and gestured to the chair opposite me. "Sit down, David. You have nothing to apologize for. You were betrayed as much as I was." He sat, but remained on the edge of the seat, his posture rigid. He told me he'd flown home the instant he'd received the evidence. His first stop was the trailer park in Bakersfield. He didn't go into detail, but the grim set of his jaw told me Jason had received a harsh lesson in fraternal justice. He had filed for divorce from Megan immediately and had no idea where she'd gone, nor did he care. Now he was back in the States, broke, with a disgraced family and a name that was poison. "I'm not here to ask for a handout," he said, finally opening his old briefcase. "I'm here to make a proposal." He laid out a meticulously detailed business plan. During his years working on international rigs, he'd built a network of contacts with distributors and retailers in Latin America. He knew the markets, the logistics, the culture. He proposed to represent Phoenix Industries, to become our exclusive distributor for the South American market. "I'll work on a commission-only basis to start," he said, his eyes meeting mine with a fierce determination. "I need to rebuild my life, honestly. And I want to prove to you that not everyone with the last name Miller is a piece of garbage." I studied the proposal. It was brilliant, well-researched, aggressive, and perfectly aligned with my company's growth strategy. It was a world away from Jason's lazy, entitled approach to business. I looked at the man before me, a man stripped of everything, yet fighting to build something new from the ashes, with nothing but his own grit and integrity. I closed the folder and extended my hand across the desk. "You have a deal, David. But let's be clear. This is strictly business. You perform, you get rewarded. You fail, you're out. And if you ever, for 1 second, try to leverage this relationship to help your brother or your parents, I will terminate this contract and personally ensure you never work in this hemisphere again." A look of grim relief washed over his face as he shook my hand. "You have my word, Miss Evans," he said. "To me, my brother is dead. That handshake wasn't just a business deal. It was an alliance of survivors, a testament to the fact that even from the most toxic soil, something good could still grow." The fluorescent lights of the arena in Santiago, Chile, beat down, turning the air into a thick, humid soup. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, a wall of sound that vibrated in my bones. I stood in the red corner, the flag of the United States on my back, staring across the canvas at my opponent. She was a legend from Brazil, a Muay Thai master known for her devastating leg kicks and unbreakable clinch. They called her the Jaguar. The first 2 rounds were a brutal war of attrition. She was relentless, chopping at my thighs and ribs with kicks that felt like they were swung from a baseball bat. The old rib injury from the qualifiers flared up, a sharp, stabbing pain with every breath I took. As the bell for the final round chimed, I was behind on points, my body battered and screaming for me to quit. The Jaguar came out for the 3rd round, smelling blood, a predator moving in for the kill. She backed me into a corner, unleashing a furious combination of punches and knees. I covered up, absorbing the blows, my vision starting to blur. And in that haze of pain and exhaustion, another image appeared. The opulent ballroom, the sneering faces, the hot soup scalding my skin. The memory didn't bring fear. It brought a surge of pure, white-hot rage. I had clawed my way out of hell. I had defeated an entire family of snakes. I would not be broken here. Not by her. Not by anyone. I exploded out of the corner with a roar that came from the very depths of my soul. I saw an opening, a momentary lapse in her defense as she wound up for another knee strike. I didn't hesitate. I threw a feint, a jab to her face that made her flinch, and then I poured every ounce of my remaining strength into my signature move. My spinning back kick connected with her liver with a sickening thud that silenced the crowd for a split second. The Jaguar's eyes went wide with shock. The air left her lungs in a whoosh, and she crumpled to the mat. The referee began the count, but it was over. She wasn't getting up. I collapsed to my knees, not from pain, but from the overwhelming, tidal wave of emotion. I had done it. I was the Pan-American champion. As they wrapped the gold medal around my neck and the sound of the Star-Spangled Banner filled the arena, I placed my hand over my heart and wept. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release, of triumph, of a woman who had fought her way back from the abyss and reclaimed her crown. Back in L.A., the U.S. Olympic Committee threw a lavish gala for the returning athletes. I stood on a balcony overlooking the glittering city lights, a glass of champagne in my hand, feeling strangely detached from the fawning crowds inside. A champion prefers solitude, I see. I turned. A man in a perfectly tailored dark suit was smiling at me. He was handsome, in a quiet, intelligent way, with kind eyes that seemed to see more than most. I recognized him from the sponsorship banners. Mark Chen, the CEO of TechCore, the billion-dollar software firm that had been a major sponsor of the team. Just needed some air, I replied. He came to stand beside me at the railing. I watched your final match, he said, his voice warm and genuine. That last kick was a thing of beauty. But what struck me more was your expression when they played the anthem. It wasn't just victory. It was something deeper, something hard-won. I was taken aback by his perception. He saw past the medal, past the champion, and saw the fight that had happened long before I ever stepped in the ring. Everyone has a story, Mr. Chen. Some are just a bit more complicated than others. He smiled. Please, call me Mark. I know a little about your story, Kayla, and I think it's one of the most incredible stories of strength and resilience I've ever heard. He paused, his gaze direct and sincere. This might be forward, but I was wondering if you'd let me take you to dinner sometime. Not to a place like this. I know a little taco truck in East LA that will change your life. No pretense, no cameras, just really good food. I looked at this man, this powerful, insightful, unassuming man offering not a flashy date to impress me, but a simple, shared meal. After years of Jason's superficiality and lies, this gesture of genuine connection felt like a revelation. A real smile, the first of its kind in a long time, touched my lips. I hope you're paying, Mark, I teased. A champion has a big appetite. He laughed, a rich, easy sound that made me feel, for the first time in forever, a flicker of hope for a future I hadn't even dared to imagine. Mark Chen stepped into my life like a gentle sunrise after a long, violent storm. He wasn't intimidated by my strength. He celebrated it. He didn't care about my past. He was only interested in our future. We didn't do fancy galas or red carpet events. Our dates were hiking in the Santa Monica Mountains, sharing tacos from a truck in Boyle Heights, and watching old movies at the Cinespia Cemetery screenings. With him, I wasn't Kayla the Hurricane Evans, the champion, or Kayla Evans, the ruthless CEO. I was just Kayla, and for the first time, that felt like more than enough. But while my life was blooming, Jason's was rotting from the inside out. After being exiled to Bakersfield, the Miller family disintegrated. Frank was left permanently paralyzed by the stroke, a drooling, bedridden shell of the tyrant he once was. Rose, stripped of her diamonds and her dignity, spent her days scrounging for change to buy her husband's medication. Jason, true to form, refused to stoop to manual labor. He spent his days drinking cheap whiskey, blaming me, the world, and his own bad luck for his downfall. Hounded by loan sharks for gambling debts he'd racked up, he decided on one last, desperate gambit. He still had an old security key card that he'd failed to turn in. He knew Phoenix Industries was on the verge of launching a revolutionary new smart fabric athletic shoe, a product poised to make billions. If he could steal the digital design files and sell them to a competitor, he'd have enough money to disappear forever. One rainy Tuesday night, he drove his beat-up sedan to the Phoenix Industries headquarters. The storm provided the perfect cover as he slipped through a side entrance, his heart hammering against his ribs. He made his way to the server room, the one place he knew held the company's crown jewels. He fumbled with the USB drive, his hands shaking as he plugged it into the main server. The progress bar on the screen began to fill. 50%, 70%, 90%. A greasy, triumphant smile spread across his face. He never knew that I had anticipated this, that the moment he swiped his old keycard, a silent alarm was sent directly to my phone and to Mike, who now headed up my corporate security. The USB port itself was a decoy, a digital mousetrap. Just as the progress bar hit 99%, the lights in the server room flared on. Jason spun around, his eyes wide with terror. I was standing in the doorway, flanked by Mike and two uniformed LAPD officers. I had a phone in my hand, displaying the live security feed of his every move. "Hello, Jason," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Working late?" The blood drained from his face. The USB drive slipped from his numb fingers and clattered to the floor. He collapsed to his knees, the old familiar groveling reflex kicking in. "Kayla, no, please, I was desperate. I was just going to borrow it." Mike stepped forward and snapped a pair of handcuffs on Jason's wrists. The cold, final click echoed in the sterile room. "Borrowing is not the word the DA is going to use, pal," Mike growled. "This is corporate espionage, breaking and entering, and attempted grand theft of intellectual property. You add that to the $500,000 you already embezzled, you're going away for a long, long time." As they dragged him away, his pathetic pleas for mercy bouncing off the walls, I felt nothing but a quiet, final sense of closure. The last ghost of my past had been laid to rest. 3 months later, Jason Miller was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. On the day of the sentencing, Rose fainted in the courtroom gallery. She woke up to a world where her son was gone, her husband was an invalid, and she was utterly alone. She eventually sold the last tiny plot of land the family owned back in Kansas to pay Jason's legal fees, and the last anyone heard, she was a hollow-eyed woman wandering the dusty streets of Bakersfield, living off charity and the kindness of strangers. The wind they had sown had finally become their whirlwind. 5 years later, the setting sun cast a golden glow over the white sands of Maui. The gentle rhythm of the waves provided a soothing backdrop to the soft violin music drifting through the air. Today, I was not a fighter or a CEO. Today, I was a bride. I wore a simple, elegant white dress that flowed in the warm Hawaiian breeze. At the end of the aisle, which was strewn with fragrant plumeria petals, Mark waited for me. The look in his eyes held all the love, respect, and adoration I had once believed I would never find. He took my hand, his touch warm and steady. Our wedding was small and intimate, attended only by the people who truly mattered. David was there, looking distinguished and successful. He was now the head of Phoenix Industries' entire Latin American division and had rebuilt his life with honor. He caught my eye and gave me a small, grateful smile. And officiating the ceremony, his gruff voice thick with uncharacteristic emotion, was Mike. "We are here today," he began, "to celebrate Kayla, A woman who has been through the fire and emerged not burned, but forged into something stronger than steel. She deserves all the happiness in the world, and she has found it with Mark. I looked at my soon-to-be husband, at the small circle of true friends and chosen family around us, and a profound sense of peace washed over me. 5 years ago, I was consumed by a righteous, burning hatred. I had sought revenge, and I had achieved it. But I learned that the sweetest revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. It's building a life so full of joy, success, and love that they become completely irrelevant. Mark slid a beautiful, simple diamond band onto my finger. I looked down at my hand, a hand that had known the rough canvas of a boxing ring and the sting of chemical cleaners, a hand that had fought and bled and worked and saw it now held securely in the hand of a man who cherished it. "Kayla," Mark whispered, his voice full of emotion, "thank you for letting me be part of your story. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure the next chapters are even better than the last." I smiled, a tear of pure happiness tracing a path down my cheek. I squeezed his hand and looked out at the vast, endless ocean. The nightmares of hot soup and cold words were gone, washed away by the tide. Before me was a clear sky, a calm sea, and a future as bright and beautiful as the Hawaiian sunset. I was Kayla Evans, the champion of my own life, and my story, finally, had the happiest of endings.